Scoop it back. All right, we're live. We're going to go over this book today, Tuttle Twins and the Fate of the Future. So this book was all about talking about the state, uh, and we'll get into that, what exactly the state is, and talking coercion versus persuasion, and that kind of stuff. So we only have 2 lessons left. We're on the second to last book, and the boys all read it last week sometime, so it's not very fresh in their memory. But we'll get started anyway. Okay. Oh, well, this book is also based on Murray Rothbard's book, The Anatomy of the State. So Rothbard was he was an economist and a leading thinker. One of my favorite economists, actually. He wrote a book also called The Case Against the Fed. Highly recommend that. It's all about the dangers of the Federal Reserve Bank and the fact that almost nobody knows anything about it unless you've studied it, and how it's probably one of the biggest threats to our free market economy and our way of life that there is out there, because nobody gets to oversee it either. So, good book, good author. Anyway, we'll get started. All right, so who remembers the book at all? Who can give us a brief summary? Blake, go for it.
Um,
Okay, Jack, go for it.
so they talked about persuasion and coercion,
Okay. That's all you got?
and how the state uses it.
Okay.
I think the Tuttle twins went to they went to like a film and saw like a movie about how in the future robots will be taking over the world, and they were like thinking about ways to not let that happen. And did they go to their neighbor?
Yeah, so they went to their neighbor Fred and asked him for a book. But the movie they saw was about a dystopian future. So what's dystopian? Do you remember, Jack, what dystopian means?
Like controlled?
Yeah, it's like a future where people are using oppression, and it's miserable. The movie was all about robots controlling people in the future and making them do stuff. So, kind of a scary movie that scared the twins and got them thinking about the future of society. So, well, let's start with just the basics. What is a state?
A form of government.
Right, a form of government. So we often think of states like Minnesota or Kansas or Colorado, but a state, in the sense we're talking about now, is a form of government. Really, it's that exercises a monopoly control. Blake, do you remember what that means if something is a monopoly?
Um, like two thing.
No. Jack, you want to help?
A group of people.
Bo, you want to help?
I don't know.
A monopoly means there's just one,
Oh.
and they control everything because there's no competition. So a state is a form of government that exercises a monopoly control over a certain territory. So in the United States, when we talk about the state, we're talking about the federal government, because the federal government has a monopoly control over the the federal government, or the country as a whole. Every state has its own government, but there's also parts of the federal government, and they're the only ones that control those parts. So, do you remember this part in the book where they show the cheetah going after the gazelle?
Mhm.
What was that talking about?
Like the people are the prey.
Okay, prey. So the gazelle is the prey, and the
then
cheetah is
the predator.
the predator, right? And why did they use that example?
Because isn't it like the government tries to go after you and take?
Yeah, it was kind of a good parallel of a government, a state, and the people. So the government has, in many cases, become the predator, and the people, the citizens, become the prey, when it was never intended that way in the first place, right? There's also another example in here about gangs. So do you remember the one about the story about the gangs and the business owner?
Yeah.
What did the business owner say about gangs?
I don't remember.
Okay, so the business owner said, some gangs had their own territory, right? They had their own part of the city that they controlled. And the business owner said he had to pay them or else they would do what?
Oh, like, rob him.
Yeah, essentially they would hurt his business. So they said either pay me or we'll hurt you or we'll hurt your business. So what kind of control is that? Remember the two types?
It's the forced one.
Okay.
Coercion.
Coercion. Good. Close. So coercion. So what is coercion?
It's where
It's when you get controlled.
where people force you to do something.
Yeah, where they force you through threat of violence, maybe they'll hurt you, or threat of a punishment of some sort, or intimidation. Like you either do this or else. And then people are scared and then they do it. So they're being coerced. Are they doing it because they want to?
No.
Are they doing it because it's the best thing for them?
No.
Are they doing it because it's even the best thing for society as a whole?
No.
No, they're doing it because they're afraid, right, of the consequences of not doing it. So what does coercion have to do with the state? So what is something that we've talked about in the past? Say when you guys get old enough and you start making money, if you make $15 an hour and you work 2 hours, that would be $30, right? So when you get a paycheck, will you get $30?
No.
How much?
You don't get paid per hour.
Yeah, okay, so let's say you get paid $30 because you $15 an hour, you work 2 hours. But are you gonna get to keep all $30 to yourself?
No.
No, why not? Where's
Tax.
taxes? So that's where a lot of the rest of it goes, right?
Yeah.
So that could be an example, right? What happens if you don't pay your taxes?
Then you get charged more.
Yeah,
Or
you
they
could
could
pay a penalty, or even
take
worse.
your house.
Yeah, they could take your house if you don't pay your property taxes, or people go to prison because they don't pay their taxes. Even though sometimes the government's asking you to hand over like half of everything you earned, so they can give it to somebody else. But if you don't do it, they're going to send you to prison. So that's why people do it. Not because they want to, right? Or not out of the goodness of their heart. There might be some people out there saying, oh, well, people should pay more taxes. You know what I asked them?
It's probably because they get paid.
Well, maybe. But some people just think that everybody should pay more taxes to help everybody else out. Well, I say, well, has anybody told you you're not allowed to pay more taxes? No, it's not illegal to pay more taxes. So I tell them, well, feel free to pay more taxes. Nobody's stopping you. So people have the choice to pay more taxes if they want to, but nobody does, right? Because you want to keep your money, because you can probably spend it a lot more wisely. So let's go back to our one of the books we read a while ago. Why are governments created, Blake?
To help.
Yeah, to help with what?
Money.
What are the 3 things that governments are created to protect?
Your rights,
property, and
your
freedom.
Yeah, your rights, so your life, your property, and your freedom, or another word for that is liberty. Life, liberty, and property, right? So are governments a bad thing?
No.
No, they're actually essential, right? When you have a society with a lot of people, somebody needs to be able to enforce the rules so that everybody doesn't have to do it themselves. So we form a government to say, hey, it's illegal to steal, it's illegal to kill, it's illegal to, um, you know, impose on somebody else's God-given rights, right? So that's why we have a government. But what's the natural tendency of government? They're created to protect people, but over time, do governments ever get smaller, or do they only get bigger?
They get big.
They get bigger, and they get more and more power. And eventually, instead of persuasion, what do they use, Blake?
Coercion.
Coercion to get you to do stuff. So we talked about coercion. So the opposite of that is what?
Persuasion.
Persuasion. So what's persuasion, Blake?
It's when you get to choose what you do.
Yeah, sure. When nobody's forcing you to.
When somebody tries to convince you to do something.
Exactly. When somebody tries to convince you by appealing maybe to your reason, your logic, your emotions, something like that. So can we think of, we probably see within our own household both coercion and persuasion, right? Can you give me an example of coercion? Just in our family? Yeah.
You force us to like put away our laundry or something.
Yeah.
Or when you or you take away our phones or something.
Right. So there. And so you do it possibly because you're afraid of losing your phone, right?
And
What else,
grades
Blake?
and stuff.
And what?
And grades.
And grades, right? So you either get good grades or else, right? Now, is that always the best way to get things done?
No.
No, that's not a very good way to lead. If you want to lead people, leading through coercion, you might get things done, but you certainly won't get the best results possible. So leading really involves persuading other people to do something that you want them to do because they want to do it. So if I could persuade you to keep your room clean, and I say, I'm not going to punish you if you don't.
I won't.
Then you won't? Okay. Well, then maybe you'll have food in your room, and then you'll get cockroaches in your room, and they'll crawl all over you while you're sleeping at night. So is that enough to persuade you to keep your room clean?
There's no cockroaches in Minnesota.
Not because you keep your room clean. But if you didn't, do you think that would be enough to persuade you? Hey, I think I might keep my room clean because I don't want cockroaches crawling over my body while I sleep. Yeah. Do I ever persuade you guys to do anything else, or is it all just coercion?
You persuade us to do stuff.
Yeah, good answer, Jack. Of course I persuade you. All right. Hey, give me an example, or else.
Or else what?
I'm kidding. Yeah, so the opposite of coercion is persuasion, which you guys know, even from experience, that's a better way to lead, right? That's a better way to convince people to do stuff, because then maybe they'll do it with a smile on their face because they want to. When we go to church and they ask for tithes, for givings, do you see anybody standing over somebody else saying, put money in the basket now?
No.
No. But when people put money in the basket, they do it out of their own free will. Nobody's making them. And guess what? That's enough money to build big churches and to pay for the infrastructure and to support local community and all the outreach that they do. And nobody told anybody to give it or forced anybody to give any money, right? That's pretty cool. So what about businesses in the free market? So if you guys had a business and say you only use coercion to run your business, and you went over to Ethan and Gracie and Caleb and said, you have to work for me or else I'm gonna break your bikes, or I'm gonna steal your skateboards and that kind of stuff. Maybe they would work for you. Would they be very good employees?
No.
No, they'd be awful employees, right? What if a business said, you have to buy my ice cream?
I'd buy it because I love ice cream.
Okay.
For
But
them.
what if they were really mean and said, you have to do this or else we're going to break your legs? Would you buy their ice cream, or would you go to a different ice cream shop?
They'll go to a different
Yeah,
one.
me too. Right? But why can the government get away with coercion instead of persuasion. The state, like
Because
in the
we
state.
can't take their freedom. We can't take
Right,
their
because
stuff.
they have a monopoly, right? So there's no competition in government. So that's why it's easier for them to use coercion, because there is no competition. There's no other government that they're competing against. So the book at the very end talked about how this could be improved, how the situation could be improved. Hey, Austin, what's up? So how could the state be improved? If you were to create a new society with a new form of government, what do you think would be some good ways to build that government? Would you just want to have one possibility of a government?
No.
So more, which is called what?
Challenge.
No, if there's more to choose from, if there's more people competing against each other, it's called,
Oh,
I just said the word,
competition.
competition, right? So if there's more competition and you didn't have to just have, maybe there's a different form of government available that you could choose, that people could choose, we want that one instead of this one, then they would be forced to actually work in your best interest and be nice to you, use persuasion instead of taking from you. You know, what if a gang member came over here and took money out of my wallet? Would that be illegal?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. What if the government does it? Is that illegal?
No.
No. Because the government doesn't have any competition, there's no other government I can choose. They get to make the rules and do what they want, or else, you know, bad stuff could happen to me. Like restaurants. Right now, if restaurants open and go against the governor's orders, what can the state do?
They can shut them down.
They can shut them down. They can take away their license and shut them down. That's why restaurants are staying closed, because they don't want to lose their license and lose their business completely. So that's the way it works. So what's an example of something in our society? Like, what's a big problem in society? Like, what's a common?
Taxes.
Okay, but what's a common one?
Right.
Let's think of like homelessness.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a problem, right? Do you think there's a way that we could solve that problem without the state?
Maybe.
Maybe? Are there a lot of good people in this country?
Yeah.
Are there a lot of people who give a lot of money to certain causes even though they're not forced to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, there's a lot of charities, right? There's a lot of good people willing to do a lot of good stuff, but when the government forces you, says, Blake, give me money because I'm going to go solve the homeless problem. I'm going to go build a house for homeless people. Like, maybe the intention is good, right? But what does that mean to you? It probably means, well, I guess I'm helping the homeless so I don't have to give any of my own money or time outside of what they make me give. Right? It kind of deters you from wanting to do more. But if you get a lot of people together, they can solve a lot of problems without the government. Typically, the state gets involved and, you know, usually makes everything worse. If you look at some of the programs they try to run. So, Blake, what's one big takeaway from this lesson?
About taxes.
Sure, what about them?
That you can go to jail if you don't pay them. Bad things will happen.
And what's
if
that
you
called?
Coercion.
Coercion, right? Okay, so you learned what coercion is. Bo, what about you? What's a takeaway?
I learned about coercion too, like forcing people to do stuff.
Okay, but give me another takeaway. That was Blake's.
The state.
What about it?
That it's not a state.
Okay, what is it?
It's a form of government.
Okay. That controls,
People.
yeah, well, and a territory, right? Jack, what's a lesson you learned?
That
What is something you know now that you didn't know 20 minutes ago?
That, like, it. Oh, I knew that.
There's another persuasion that you can talk about.
Okay.
Yeah, like it's better to persuade people sometimes than to force them to do something.
Right. Right. You're going to get better results. Right?
You didn't know that?
And that's what really free will is, giving people the free will to choose whether they want to do something or not. All right, cool. Let's see. So only one more lesson to go. This is what we're going to read next week. It'll be the final lesson, Messed Up Market. So it probably kind of wraps everything up. I haven't read it yet, but we'll be back next week for another one.
Is that the